G'day guys, and welcome to a very special edition of Comics to Movies and More. We have the whole creative team behind the amazing Doorman graphic novel. So, Stephen, we've got a bunch of guests to come on to talk about one of the amazing Kickstarter Awards winning graphic novels.
I know. Look, I'm actually really excited about this one. We've got basically the whole, like a cast of thousands, basically sitting in the green room right now. And it'll be really interesting, especially for a lot of first-time creators, because we're actually going to be running through the entire process from, editing, pre-development, all the way. We even got a pre-press guy here as well to talk about how to get your books ready to print. So it's all very, very exciting.
Well, let's bring them all out because we've got quite a few people to add on here. So I think this is the most we've ever had on the show. I thought the Kickstarter Awards show we had a few people, but welcome everybody. How is everyone going?
Good, thanks, Shaun.
Good, thanks.
Yes, good.
Nice
meeting you guys.
Nice to meet all you guys too. And thank you so much for coming on. This is really, really exciting to be able to talk to basically an entire creative team. We've got an hour, so we're not going to waste it. So starting with yourself, Mark, how did Doorman start? I've got a little bit of insight. I know it was a film script, but what made you change tack halfway?
Well, there's a worldwide shift in the world called the pandemic, and that kind of made the decision for me, really. But before that, I'm an actor predominantly, so I was kind of always looking for something to kind of sink my teeth into. And I was working at the door of nightclubs, and I just had this epiphany that this character might be an interesting character. So I started a kind of long 10-year journey of writing it and developing it. And yeah, it was a film that was going to get made in 2020 before the pandemic showed up.
Okay, look, it's a shame, but there's two people here I'm going to single out here, and this is Tim and Alexis, mainly because they were your pre-development editors, from what I've been told. How did it go? How was it like working with Mark to? And I know a lot of times you have this really cool concept, but it takes a lot of work to make it a story. So how did everything go? Did you kill anybody which you shouldn't have killed, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I think when Mark first approached Alexis and I, he had basically a full film script ready to go. So there was a pretty rich story from the get-go. But there was a lot of, we had to basically, our job was to turn that from a film script into something that would work as a graphic novel in a different medium. And so, yeah, definitely there were some changes. And even beyond that, just I think, like Mark mentioned, the world changed a lot in the last couple of years. And so that mindset and shift in culture and mentality has influenced the story as we've gone along as well. So yeah, things have changed. There was a favorite character at one point that all of a sudden Mark dropped a bomb on us and said that, the end of book 3, and I kind of rang him and was like, hey, just checking that this is actually legitimate. What's going on? And I think a character Alexis and I both loved. And he was like, yeah, that's it. And he definitely pulled the rug out from under us. But we talked it through, and I don't want to play any spoilers or anything, but we ironed out some kinks, and it's all kind of made sense. But it's been a really interesting ride. I think the heart of the story has stayed the same, particularly the main character and his journey. But there's definitely been some major shifts, which I'm sure Alexis can chip in and talk about as well.
Yeah,
Alexis?
Definitely. First, it was such a pleasure working with Tim and working with Mark. They're so easy to work with. And what brought us onto this project was Mark has created a really strong world, a really beautiful world that really portrays Melbourne as this incredible playground, this really diverse city. And so having this strong world, our job as development editors are more about shaping it into the individual voices of the characters, making all of those different elements shine, and making sure that there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of page turning going on. So sometimes it's shortening dialogue, sometimes it's saying maybe there's too many panels, sometimes it's maybe modifying some arcs just to get the best out of their characters. I mean, Tim's really said it right. There was a character that we absolutely love, and it was kind of shocking. And it's nice to see in the new drafts that we've got that Mark has written so well, that that character is playing this really beautiful new role. And that's coming out of Mark's head. Our job is really just to support him to get that great message and those great character arcs across. And so it's actually a really, really fun job to do.
Awesome.
I think I'll add in, sorry, I was just going to add in, I think, you know, Mark's are very artistic and often can be fairly abstract in his thinking. And I think he's probably be the first person to admit that. And often I think Alexis and I have been a bit of a grounding influence as well. Just kind of chatting with him and just going, like, you've obviously got this strong idea in your head, but I don't understand what it is yet. Like, let's talk about it and talk it through. And as Tanya's come on, she's been fantastic with actually going, hey, I don't understand this as well. And we've talked through it and we thought we've got it, but we obviously haven't. So having that fresh eyes come in later on the project with Tanya has been fantastic too.
Yeah, and just to peg you onto that, you know, like you were saying before, Tim, this is all happening in real time. You know, we're writing this thing and it's a very live script. Obviously, we had, you know, an arc of the story that was existing from the original film script that's been adapted. But because of the pandemic and the way the world is moving and lives are being changed and all these things around us, it's very much a live script. So it kind of behooved us to kind of not so much to be on the nose about it, but to use some of the things that we're all experiencing right now in the story to make it much more relatable. And in doing that, in moving the goalpost along the way, I found that me, Tim, and Alexis, we're all seeing the same thing in the real time, and I had to, like, at some point get someone that was completely foreign from it, completely cold, just someone that was you know, seeing it just cold. And we brought Tanya in, and she's just been amazing, right at the right moment.
Awesome. And Alexis, you actually said the absolute magic word in terms of editing. I don't know if you picked it up that you actually said it, but it's the page turn. Yes. And that's something that's very different from writing a comic to a film script. So for people who don't know, not all pages are created equal in a comic book. If you imagine if you're opening a book, the page one final panel is actually, I think they always say, that's the most important panel in your entire book. Because if someone opens the comic, they read page one, they come to the final panel of page one. If they don't flip it, your story's done. Or they're not going to read on. So that's why that page one, final panel, you need to have enough for them to turn the page. That's why the second page is actually not as important as the third page, final panel again, because you need to keep tempting them to keep turning the pages. So and this is a little bit more technical, every odd page final panel is more important than any even page. So if you always, a lot of trick a lot of writers do is, in the first page final panel, they ask a question that doesn't get answered, and you have to flip the page for the answer. So you said it, so I'm assuming you planned this. Is that something that you actively work through the script with Mark? Because it's not something that's...
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And I think what's great is because Mark is already such a connoisseur when it comes to graphic novels, that his paneling and the way that he's done it and put emphasis on that you want to turn the page is already there. I think that our role was in the pace. And as you say, not every page is equal. Not every panel is equal as well. And that was something as well to get our heads around. And I think in terms of making it more of a page turner, it was also about reducing the amount of text and how much story can you say with less. What's great about films is with actors, you can sit with an actor in a scene with no dialogue for 10 minutes and have something that is arresting. And you're absolutely right. It's so different with a graphic novel. And so we did work towards that philosophy that you've had. But I have to say, you've said it in the most technical and brilliant way about that last panel and that question. And so, yeah, you're entirely right.
Oh, look, and it's something that and because this is mainly a comic channel, a lot of good writers actually miss that. They actually miss that when you're writing for comics, there's actually a lot of little technical points, like the usual one. Every panel can only have one action, and all that little technical points that you need. A lot of film writers miss that, and from what you've said, I think Mark has assembled a really good team, because when you said page turn, I click. They know what you're doing, because if you say you're watching the page turn, that's not, writers who never mention it haven't done it. Okay, so Mark, so now you've got this great team. You've assembled this fantastic story with page turns and cliffhangers and all the rest of it. At what point, I'm assuming at this point, Tanya, you jumped in a little bit to go, okay, let's see whether this all makes sense from a proofing point of view. And I'm assuming at this point, Mark's already half started on the illustrations. So, Mark, at this point, how were you and Tanya working well together?
Well, Tanya's actually an actress, and I met her in an acting class, and she's quite specific with dialogue, where I kind of, as an actor, I come from a different process. She's much more technically astute. And I showed her just a couple of these pages, and funnily enough, this character Jack that I was always developing, he has one particular. He appears as this kind of aristocratic, benevolent kind of composer with some kind of Shakespearean delivery. And I just showed Tanya, because we're working on something in Shakespeare, and she attacked it, and and then I said, okay, have a look at a couple other pages, and have a look at a couple other pages. Before I know it, I said she's actually she's got a handle on it, and she was asking some really pointed, specific questions that I knew that none of us were seeing at this particular point in the process.
So Tanya, how did you find the process? Like, you can tell us warts and all the fun stuff that happened, and if you did something you didn't like, you can share it now, because no one,
Yeah, this is going out live, so you can put it right on the spot.
The show, okay, all right. No, it was similar to what Mark just said. I found it fascinating. Like, I met Mark. We were working on a scene together. We became friends. He said, do you want to have a look at this project I'm working on? Just I'll get your opinion. I was like, sure. And I was really impressed. I was obviously on so many levels, just the story and the illustrations, and that really impressed me. And then I've got a background in film making as well as acting, and I've also edited a few other types of books, children's books and nonfiction books. And so I also have very strong opinions, which I'm not shy to share. So, and I'm always about the story. So if something isn't making sense, or I feel like something can be stronger in a character, then I'm excited about it, and I want to make the story as strong as possible. And it's interesting, because at first when Mark was saying, he and Tim and Alexis had been working on it, but they'd been working on it and were so deep in that they had perhaps, they were so involved in the depths of it that they were really interested in having fresh eyes. At first I was like, oh yeah, sure. But then when I started realizing the level of detail in the story and the arcs throughout the 4 different books, I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I got really sucked into the story and the characters and the whole project. And so what happened is a friend saying, hey, have a look at this thing that I did. Suddenly I've gotten really invested, and I'm really excited about the outcome of it all.
I have to ask, though, you know how it ends, don't you? You know the ending. You don't have to spoil it for everybody out there, but you know how it all ends.
No, I don't. You don't know it.
I know a vague thing for the final book. So my involvement has only been sort of through the story of book 3 at the moment. So I'm still really excited. I think, they're dangling it in front of me. They're teasing me on.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, look, and now that, it's been developed, the artwork's coming together. And I have to say, I'm going to throw this one to Simon. The coloring for this book is very, very unusual. You're not, like, you have your usual mainstream coloring, which tries to emulate life as much as possible. So it's like a photo type thing. Yours is nothing like it, which I think really suits the book. You want to run it through the color schemes and why you chose certain things? I know that there's the heavy blues and all that thing, but I'll pass it to a guy who knows the color scheme better than I do.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think, first of all, I come from a fine art photography background. So I guess a lot of my study was artistic lighting and composure of photographs, and that kind of leans heavily in how I color comic books. I tend to, I guess, push away from realistic, I guess if you say, I call it more local colors in terms of what you see is what you get. Grass is green, sky is blue. I tend to prefer to go to look at emotions and the psychology of color and how you can push that through the coloring of comic books. And also with this project in particular, I think Mark's art is coming from a very filmic quality. It's his composition and the, I guess, angular structure of a lot of his work. It really does lend itself to the style of coloring I like, which is not your I guess your grass is green kind of coloring, and to, I guess, build on that as well. It's always been something, and the reason Mark reached out to me initially is because I'm born and bred in Melbourne. I've been in Melbourne my whole life. I've actually just recently moved to Regional Vic, but I've kind of lived 40 plus years in Melbourne, and he was looking for someone who understood the colours and the personality of Melbourne and Melbourne at night as well. I mean, I spent a lot of time out at bands and stuff like that, so I know what it looks like at night, and that's very important to this book, I think.
Look, if we can pop that image back up for a second, Shaun, the one that you showed before. Look, the one thing I really like about the colors in this one is you have that really almost muted blues, like almost that nightclub scene, that muted blues. And then you have the yellow. And the yellow is usually, and if you, my limited knowledge of the color scheme, so please educate me if I'm wrong, but the yellows are usually more that daylight type scene. And when you usually have blues, you try to match it with the reds a little bit, but you notice your reds are in the corner. So it actually is a very, very pleasing visual image, but it's very, very stark. You get a huge contrast because you don't have the red butted against the blue. You have the yellow, which softens it, but you still have the red in the corner. If it was that intentional? Because it's...
Yeah, I think there's a few elements at play there. I mean, there's definitely, Mark and I spoke about creating Melbourne as a character and obviously having the moods and I guess the personality of the city come through in the colours. I guess with that particular scene, Womb is the nightclub it's shot out the front of, and that's got a palette that we developed for that particular nightclub. In book 2, there's a different nightclub, and that's got a different palette as well. So it's also a scene setting thing as well, where we're trying to establish a sense of place through the colours in terms of the city as a whole, and then the individual kind of elements and I guess sections of that city within there. So the reader will recognise where a scene is set via the colours as well as via the location itself and how it's drawn.
Fantastic.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that. I don't think I've really noticed that on comic books before. I'm actually going to go back and have a look to see if anyone else has done that. It's something subtle but probably subconscious that and that triggers in you. And I have to say that I have been to the room a couple of times. I'm a Melbourne boy myself, so yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, look, and I'll probably throw this one to Pat and Danny a little bit because you've got the colors half done. It's now Kickstarter time. The whole project's now being crowdfunded, and it's a new project. So in most cases, you don't have an existing audience. So I'll throw this on to Pat. How did you wrangle all these people here to get everything ready for the Kickstarter? And Danny, now that everything's been wrangled, how did you build an audience for this? Because you don't have an inbuilt audience. So, Pat, you want to start? Like, how did you get everybody wrangled in and ready to roll, really, for the crowdfunding campaign? I think you're on mute.
Mark was the visionary. He was the one that had pretty much in place what his vision was for this and what he wanted to portray and how he wanted to illustrate, but not so much tell the story. So he pretty much sort of started the journey, but I came along with him to give him more of a sense of commercial reality, but also a sense of making sure that the people and the team that he was gathering around him had similar passions and vision and a real desire to take the journey along with him. To really, illustrate the fact that this story was going to be told in the fashion that Mark's done it. And Mark has a great depth of understanding in the fact of how he wanted to tell this story to the future readers of this comic. So for me, the wrangling was the easy part. I think the challenge was more how were we going to get this out into the public eye, and obviously getting it onto Kickstarter. And I suppose it was really scoping that in a commercial sense, as to the viability of it with the key stakeholders of the team in tow. And we sat down and we sort of, we really sort of fleshed it all out. And to the great satisfaction, and I think compliment to Mark, his story and his passion that he portrayed really sort of set that story out, and it gave it a real, literally a real kickstart onto Kickstarter. And obviously the success on the success of that. I hate puns. But it was a great success. So, it was satisfying for Mark, but it was satisfying for the team that it really demonstrated the fact that there were people out there that had that similar desire to want to see the story be told. And then from there, I suppose I'll lead into Danny, because we had to get this message out and how we were going to portray it. And Danny was the brain thrust through all that. So over to you, Danny.
Thank you, Pat. I think you give me way more credit than I deserve, but I think mainly, like kind of everybody said, the story was obviously already there, and it was so super strong that I think it was more just about being able to get the right people's eyeballs on it, and kind of, I guess, fostering a space where it sort of felt a bit more like a one-on-one connection. Social media kind of sometimes feels like you're just blasting it to everybody, but I think it was more about, in this instance, kind of making it feel like you're having this kind of intimate one-on-one conversation with Mark, and he's telling you this beautiful story, and then you get these visuals that go along with it. So I think initially we just tried to kind of be where people would be, where we thought the right audiences would be, and just kind of, I guess, as we went along, sort of drip feed different parts of the story to kind of like entice and get people excited. And I guess that's still kind of the job of it now. I don't know the whole story either, so kind of what I have, I sort of spin into something that still kind of gets people excited and keeps people guessing, which is easy because I'm still doing that myself.
Oh, fantastic. Look, one question though, and this is something that Kickstarter does very well. Again, a lot of people watching this also want to create their own books. Did you do a pre-launch? And I can't remember whether you guys did. Was there a pre-launch campaign for The Doorman, or did you just basically launch and go live?
Well, there was, Doorman as a film had been kind of around for a while, and I'd done a couple of things, some events to kind of kickstart the film, or at least build an interest or an audience in the film iteration of it. And then, so it was kind of in there, you know, some people knew me as a doorman, as an actor as well in this doorman. So people kind of knew that I was working on it. So it did have some kind of eyes on it and an audience already ready to go. But when we pivoted and we turned it into a graphic novel, then it was really about introducing it within that medium.
Fantastic. Look, the reason for this, and this might help with your next social media campaign as well, it's actually a new feature in Kickstarter. It's less than 2 years old. So what Kickstarter allows you to do is, if you just have your banner and a tagline, it actually allows you to create a page, and the link is the same when you go live. It's the same link. So you get a banner and some text. And what you can then do is, if you remember Marketing 1011, when you shout out to everybody, say, hey, check me out, you always need to give them a specific action. Like, for example, you know, if you're McDonald's, buy the Big Mac, buy the fries, or whatever, you give them a specific action to do. So the cool thing about the pre-launch is you can actually say to them, hey, take a look at Doorman version 2 or my latest project, but please hit the notify button on the link. For example, here's one. So this is a pre-launch page for one of Shaun's next projects. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to start getting followers. You can see in this case, there's 52 followers here. So your next project, you can start accumulating followers even before you launch. And that's a really good thing to do because you're building interest and hype. And when you pick up a follower, each of those followers will get notified when it goes live. They'll get notified, I think, on the last 2 days. They get notified on the last 8 hours. There's a whole notification regime they get hit through. So, and not just that, if people hit that notify button, they are what they call, in marketing terms, they are a warm audience because they already have a Kickstarter account. That means they're more inclined to back already. So one of the biggest hurdles to getting someone to back, especially somebody who's new, is they don't have a Kickstarter account and go, oh, you know what? I like the project. I'll wait until it comes to the bookstores because you know what? I don't want to set my account up. But with the pre-launch, these are people who already have accounts.
Yeah, gotcha.
So the next time you do this, gosh, get your 100 followers, get your 200 followers.
Get them in there. And is this yours, Shaun?
We're not here to talk about mine, mate. I was just showing this example. But yeah, it's a great tool. It really is a great tool to use. It only started, I think, about halfway through last year, I'm pretty sure. And being able to garner that audience beforehand, like you were saying with the film, you know, you go out, you're talking to people, you're schmoozing with people and getting them interested in you know, financing the film or that type of stuff. Well, this pre-launch link is the same thing. You can start, you know, hooking people in with that tagline and that type of stuff, get them following you, and then that email notification of when you launch and all that type of stuff really helps you with that initial launch of your Kickstarter. So both Stephen and I have been doing it over our last 3 or 4 projects, and my last project was the best launch I've ever had. So it was the most people that I had following my project before launching, and that translated into having the best first 24 hours from a project. So it's definitely an amazing tool to kind of use.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So, Danny, just from the social media side, which ones do you think worked the best for Doorman? Was it, I'm assuming you used Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Which one had the biggest engagement that you found?
We did not use Twitter.
Okay.
We used Facebook and Instagram, and we did a little bit of stuff on Reddit as well, actually, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, I just, I think because it was so visual, I think we kind of just wanted to keep it on those channels that are kind of most known for that, which predominantly is Instagram as well as Facebook. But yeah, I think it was just kind of what we decided and kind of went with, and it sort of worked for us. So I think we just didn't kind of spread ourselves too thin.
Oh, fantastic. How was Reddit? Because Reddit's really interesting because Reddit, I find the audience in Reddit, they don't like to be felt that they're being sold that. I always find that in the interactions with the Redditors, they're there to say their piece or whatever, but they hate to be sold to. Did you find that at the same time with Reddit, or did you find a very warm audience from there?
Well, with Reddit, we ran ads only. We didn't do kind of anything, I guess, native in feed. And it was a very sort of one-sided conversation. So there wasn't really interaction back with us. It was very much a direct to the Kickstarter. And I think I was very careful with the language that I used, as much as you know that something that's sponsored, that's coming to you is obviously with a kind of ad purpose and a call to action purpose. It was just more about kind of keeping it lofty and kind of creating interest around it to sort of not give you all the answers so that you're sort of like, wait, what is this? What's happening? And then kind of led you to where you needed to be to get the monies.
Oh.
It's a fine line between with that language between asking for support and getting people interested in your project and sounding like you're desperate. So it's a very fine line.
I'm desperate. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm desperate as well. So.
Let's not pretend, like. And thank you everybody who has supported us in the past, but we are desperate because.
I think that if you're desperate, that's okay, to be honest.
Oh, sorry,
I'm definitely honest about it. That's why. So,
so I want to throw this open to everybody at this point because running a Kickstarter is one of the most, especially if you guys haven't been through the process. I know this is one of Mark's first campaigns. You're hitting that F5 button, that refresh. Come on, change the numbers the whole time. And I'm guaranteeing all of you guys were glued to your screens at a certain stage watching it go through. How was that like to actually see the numbers go up and see the excitement build and the things that we hate, and I might as well just say, is when somebody retracts a bid and when you think, oh, we reached up this level, and then they retract it down. I've also got, I'll be honest, I've got a bit of OCD as well. So let's put it out there. When I get up to something like 99 backers or something like that, I'm just going, come on, you can't stay at 99. Somebody just hit the 100. I think one of my
that's when you message me.
And then message you, please, Shaun, I just need that to get up to one. How did you find the experience of Kickstarter? Because it is, it can be very draining as you're, refreshing the screen multiple times. And I'll throw it open to all the editors because I'm guaranteed you guys are watching it as well.
I didn't think we were going to make it. I was stressing on Mark's behalf, just like, halfway through going, I'm sharing on my Instagram and like backed it myself as well. And I was just like, we've got to get this over the line. But credit to Pat and Danny and Mark for getting it over the line, because I think it kind of came down to the wire, didn't it, Mark?
It did. Yeah. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it really did. And full credit really has to go to Danny and Pat, because I was actually on stage doing a play, and the last day of the last performance of that play was the last day of the Kickstarter. So I was literally on stage while numbers were happening and texting, and people were texting me, and I went backstage and people were like, can I still donate? Can I still back it? And I'm like, so I really just, it's not like I completely abandoned the project, but I did say to Danny and Pat, listen, I'm going to be in this land for about 2 weeks, and you might not see me for 1 week, which is the last week of the Kickstarter campaign. So we just crammed so much content, much stuff. We loaded it up, really ready to go. And Danny was like, she just pretty much had everything set to play and kind of executed it perfectly. So it was crazy, but it was well worth it, and everything kind of just crescendoed and peaked at the right time.
So Danny, lots of credits going to you. How was the last 24 hours from you? Can I ask, how much coffee did you drink in the last 24 hours? Did you sleep in the last 24 hours?
Yes, I did. I remember I had a few like dates kind of in my mind where I was like, we need to reflect at this date, at this date, at this date. And I sort of said to him, I think we had maybe like a day left, and I was like, we have to have a real conversation whether we want to like let this flow out and not make it, or if we want to pull it at the last second. And Mark was very steadfast. He was like, no, it's gonna happen, we're gonna make it. And we did. I remember waking up and I was like, it's happened, it's done. So I think a lot of people who have worked on the project have had a really great opportunity to have this kind of collaborative teamwork, whereas I kind of just directly work with Mark. So it was just a lot of me and Mark being like, I don't know. But yeah, it kind of, we just did what we had to. We planned, we executed. I just tried to take away from Mark where I could and then lean on him when I was able. So yeah, I guess we just pulled a rabbit out of a hat.
Fantastic. Pat, how was the last 24 hours for you? Because
Well,
it's you sleep.
Well, I'll be honest with you guys. I think that the credit goes to Mark and Danny. I think Mark was steadfast, as Danny pointed out, as far as, and I was in the same position as Mark. I knew that this would get over the line without doubt. You know, it had legs, as they say. We just had to have faith. And look, we had to understand there, and I said this to Mark at the time, there's going to be ebbs and flows through the whole journey of this. You know, when we're hitting a particular time of the year that there was going to be an initial level of interest, and it would die down. It would then pick up again. It would die down. And then I think the plan, which I think, you know, executed impeccably, was that we pretty much phased the approach and the attack. So then we knew that we would go with one last concerted push, and to Danny's point, that we really just hammered it home and just backed ourselves. And I said to Mark, have faith, it'll come. And I think I got a text from Mark at about 3 a.m. in the morning. I think Mark it was, because you were still up after the play, and you said that we got there over the line. So that was, as far as I'm concerned, a sense of, you know, absolute euphoria, but a sense of achievement and commitment that we stuck to our guns, we aimed for the objective, we didn't waver, and we steadfast through the whole journey, and it hit the results. But yeah, look, there were nerving times during the whole process of it. But again, going to Mark's point, you know, he was in another zone. You know, like he had other things he had to attend to, and rightfully, you know, and he left it in the hands and the other thing I've got to say, and I speak not just for Mark but for the entire team, there's that sense of trust and that sense of collaborative spirit, that there's no one in this group that you'll ever think that they're going to let the team down. They're committed 100% along the journey in taking with Mark on this. So, you know, for us, it was just a case of trust, and we just fulfilled it.
Oh, fantastic. And look,
Alexis, had you had any involvement with a Kickstarter before, or was this your first?
No, this was the first start. Yeah, first start for us. Look, Mark and I sat down at the very start of this, and Mark again did a lot of interrogating and a lot of scoping and a lot of research. And you know, we sat down and we gave it some really, you know, deep, meaningful thinking about whether or not this was going to be the right vehicle for the comic to be launched on in terms of platform, not just to get the awareness, but to get the buy-in. And, you know, but we had to sit down and we had to map out a plan as to how we're going to approach it. And, you know, again, hats off to Mark and to Danny, because, you know, the vision got fulfilled and the success was there.
I just want to say we've where it's at right now is you know, we've kind of, as I was mentioning before, it's a live project, and it's kind of moving. The goalpost keeps moving. We keep discovering these new things with the story, and you know, obviously there's that structure there that will never change, and I wrote it knowing exactly where I wanted the last scene to be. And that has never changed. We've had 35 drafts of the script as the film script. And I've had countless script editors saying to me, why don't it end like this? Why don't it end like, I'm like, no, it ends like this. And I know exactly where I want the end point to be. So for me, and I kind of borrowed this from one of my favorite playwrights, his name is Sam Shepard. He always writes the last scene first and kind of reverse engineers the narrative or the story backwards from there. But as an actor, you always want to know where you end up. So as we've had this experience of like keeping this narrative and knowing exactly where we're going to end up, along the way, we've had to change a few things with the story and get more invested in things. And because of that, and obviously everyone involved in the project has lives and have commitments, and the world around us isn't as quite as, the plans that you make don't end up happening. So where we find ourselves at this particular point is that the book is on track, but we're finding that we're just delaying it a little bit to give us a little bit of breathing space and don't feel burned out. And but we're so committed to finish this book. I mean, this thing has been in my life for about 10 years plus now. And there's nothing more that I would want to get this out of my brain and on a piece of paper and to like say, this is done, whether it turns into a film or not. I still feel like it will be a film or a 6-part show, 6-part TV show. But yeah, right now we're so committed to finishing this book, and we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think we can all agree on that. And it's been, you know, a really great journey. I mean, I've learned so much through this process, not just as an actor, but as someone drawing it. The process of drawing it and discovering this character, which is something that, you know, my process as an actor is very different. I'm inside out, and this process has made me really look at the process of acting that role or playing that character Jack in a very different way. I've had to process it from the outside in, and drawing it has been amazing. But the IP of Doorman, I feel like the elasticity of the story is stretched, and it can stretch even further. And we're actually thinking of, I think the term is Easter eggs within the story that can kind of branch out past this book. And we're all looking at those opportunities, and we're kind of flagging these interesting little spin-offs. So there's a lot of plasticity in the idea. When you think of a door, there's so much symbolism around that. And that's why it's been really hard to like play this character or to write this character. And within the medium of a graphic novel, it's very different medium from a film, because in a film you can project so much of your performance through your eyes or your behavior. And with comics, I really had to write Jack's inner monologue. I had to go and make some definitive choices as the actor, how I would play that character in that space at that particular time, whereas before I was kind of going to leave it. So it's been an amazing journey, and we're right at the point now where we're starting to, you know, see it printed out. We're seeing it like, I mean, to hold the proof in my hand, which Liam kind of gave to me the other day, was a freak out moment. It kind of to hold something in your hand that probably the year before that you were just thinking about doing, and it was just a whole bunch of loose thumbnails. It was a great moment for me, and I can't wait for everyone else to get this in their hands.
Just
That
as a
feeling
comment-
never gets
yeah.
old, mate. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how many comics you do, that feeling never gets old.
Cool.
I think at the end of each project, to finally get that proof, that first proof in your hand, and I don't know whether Liam knows how much joy he brings to people or creators from that point of view. But when you get that in your hands, it's really hard to even describe that feeling type of thing. There's relief, there's joy, there's excitement, there's all these things, and then that moves away pretty quickly to realize what you have to do after that.
I'm 100% sure. It never, first book, second book, 50th book, or whatever, it doesn't change that proof copy, which is actually a really interesting segue because we've got the guy who does the proofs and the pre-press. Liam, how was the experience? Because and look, I'm happy to go a little bit more technical because I really want these people who have never printed before to know what trim is, what bleed is, and what to watch out for. Because anecdotally, I made so many mistakes and I had things cut off, lettering too close to the edge. Look, if you want every mistake, I've made it. So I want people to avoid the same thing. So Liam, what can we do to make your life easier and we get the best looking proof we can?
I'm in a fine line between giving people information. I don't want to send anyone to sleep after all this information about the interesting creative stuff that goes on. Yeah, but look, it's been about 5 months I've been working with Mark on this just to make sure that we get the right result at the end of the project. It's really amazing to see everyone that's been putting their time and effort, energy into this to make it happen. And it's a privilege to work on it and actually, be involved in it. So, what I've been working on is, as you say, the technical side of it to make sure that the outcome of all those creative processes are going to result in a quality product when the ink actually hits the paper, when it's too late to go back. The outcome is going to be the result of all the processes and decisions that came before it. So Mark's done a really good job of reaching out early in the process to get the jump on any technical issues that we might encounter during the pre-production and the production stage, and get everything just right. So that's been a fair bit of testing and back and forth, and we've now, as you say, we've produced our preliminary proof, so that Mark's been able to see and the team's been able to see their initial result, and kind of prove that process is of quality work. All that pre-work has got the right result. Yeah.
I'm going to throw the next question to Simon because as the colorist, I think you'll be one of the next people to actually look at the proof. Have you had a chance to look at it yet? Does it match the colors you want it to match?
Well, it's been a bit tricky because I'm now in regional Vic and there's a big kind of circle of steel around the city. So I'm not able to get in to see it. But come November, I plan to get down there. I need a whole bunch of comics got to pick up from All Star Comics, and people got to meet. And Mark will be one of those people that's high on the priority to meet. And I can't wait to see how the colours turned out. And I've got no doubt from what I've seen through posts he's done and images that he's shared that they've come out pretty spot on from what I've seen. But it's always great to see it in the flesh. I come from 20 years in graphic design as well, so I'll be picking it to pieces. But I'm pretty confident that from what I've seen, it's looking pretty spot on, and we're in good hands with Liam, I think.
Fantastic. So just one tip I like to give everybody, and I'm sure Mark, by the sounds of it, Liam, he did it absolutely perfectly. But when you draw a page, for any artist out there, when you draw a page, make sure you include some bleed. The guy who cuts the page can never cut it absolutely perfectly, and that's why you have that little bit of extra so it can be trimmed. Otherwise, I am very guilty of this, so don't get me wrong. Everything I'm telling you guys, I have screwed up myself, so I'm not saying, but always make sure you have bleed and make sure you have something that you can drop a little bit because things are never just perfect. And Liam, when you laid out the page as well, I'm assuming it's not. And the other thing would be is check the colors, and that's why I threw that question to Simon. Is the printed color and the color on the screen are not always going to be the same, and sometimes it's what you have to live with, depending on the printer you go with, and sometimes it's saying to the printer, "Hey, look, this doesn't match, or this swatch is not quite right." Did you have much go back and forth about that, or was it, hey, we got it? It sounds like with 5 months planning, you guys had it down pat before it actually came down to print. Was that the case?
I think the color was, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but the color changed a little bit over the course of the process. Like early on, there was a different palette in some of the early stuff that we looked at, and it's sort of changed into its final format just in the most recent group of files. So that would have had to have been checked on screen, I guess.
Yeah, well, me and Simon were, probably at that point where we were really just discovering the language of what we're going for. And like Simon was saying, Melbourne needed to be a particular color, certain shades of blue, and then everything else kind of had its own kind of, its own language as well, color language. So I think at that point, we're sending it to you just to try and get the language going with yourself. So it might have been some really early stuff.
Yeah. So the color is something that will probably solidify once we do some final proofing of the artwork. At the moment, it's, I guess, a pre-proof stage. We haven't moved into the print pre-production stage. We've done a print of the art at its current stage, but it's still to go to like a pre-production phase. When we do that, we'll run wide format proofs, which are color accurate, and we'll be able to see pretty much exactly what's going to come out on the print. That's the intent of that proofing. But look, the artwork is, I guess, it's just the basic line work that it's hanging from is so good. I think it's going to look great regardless of the color. Whether it changes 5% here or there.
The colorist is just next to you.
He's speaking to the strength of the line work and the coloring. It is just amazing.
Well, I think another, just wanted to mention as well, is that something that's we've done in this book as well is what's called pretty extreme use of color holds in the inks, which is, there's not really that many inks that are pure black. There's a lot of blues and purples, greens, even in the actual inks themselves, which I guess is just, picking up on that sense of that filmic quality of the comic and the illustration, and showing the emotion through that as well. So that in itself will be interesting to see through the printing process, because those colors need to be pushed pretty dark, and it's a matter of still trying to keep that hue and not have it go black or muddy. So it's something that hopefully translates well when we see the proofs. And
just to say, with Simon, this is my first, I call this the COVID project for me, but this has become like drawing a comic and drawing it with 34 pages per book. And sometimes you feel like you just have to keep going. I'm sure you guys know that. You could get really stuck on a panel and a particular detail, and you want to just keep being real finicky, and it's kind of like molding. And then you look at the time, you say, if I stay on this page for another 2 hours, I'm not going to stop till next week. And in doing that, sometimes you just got to pick your battles and choose your wars. And sometimes Simon has been amazing, because I've said, listen, I'm on a good click on this page, and I'm really rocking on this page. And then I just had to finish it here, and his colors just always come in and just make everything just smash it out of the park for me. So, and he's been doing it a lot longer than me. So I really feel like he gives me some really great advice and some interesting things of how to pull focus in the page and composition. And, he's A game all the time. So I'm lucky to have the guy.
So now's the fun part of it, and I don't know if you guys have planned up to this stage. So you actually haven't started this part, which is, it's fun, but it's also a little bit, and it's fun also from a social media point of view. Fulfillment, the best part of every campaign. So, Pat, have you planned the fulfillment stage a little bit? And Danny, have you planned the whole social media side around the fulfillment? Because half the fun of fulfillment is, look, I've got my book, or you send pictures of the completed book, and it builds the hype up for the next campaign. Pat, have you planned fulfillment yet, or is that still down the track?
We have started talking about it, because obviously the end game is that these books are going to be created, they're going to be published, and they're going to be shared amongst the investors. So that's the most important aspect of it, that we want to ensure that we are fulfilling the obligation and the promise that we set out, Mark's promise, to set out that we will deliver an absolute premium quality publication. But we are talking between Danny, Mark and myself in the next phase of this. We don't want to start too early. I think for us, it's going to be a very strategic and a very phased approach. And we're going to be drawing momentum, building up to the crescendo of that particular time that it's actually launched properly, which will be, and I'll leave that with Mark to divulge that in due course. But we are most certainly in the process of having that mapped out and how we're going to go about it. Because for us, I think it's not just fulfilling the obligation of, as we've said, the stakeholders, the investors, but we want to actually expand and get more exposure of Doorman to a wider audience. So for us, it is going to be about really getting the momentum, I suppose. And as I said to Mark, I think, kudos to him in the acknowledgement and the achievement that he recently has been bestowed as far as the award and of the recognition of the work that he's been done on an independent level. That's absolutely outstanding. On a local level, we've got to take the momentum of that and really play on it and bring it to the surface to really sort of showcase what this series of publications are going to be worth to any budding comic book fan, I think. So, yes. So, short answer, yes, we are in the process.
Oh no, we love your answers. So, Danny, when we're fulfilling, I'm assuming you're putting a whole strategy in place that when the books start rolling out and people start getting their copies, you're going to get reviews and stuff in. Are you excited about that next phase of marking? The review phase. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Of course I am. As much as it is good to have a strategy and know what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, I think I'm just really excited to finally see people actually have the physical copies in their hands and being able to enjoy the story and kind of just share those little moments on social. I think that's going to be really exciting, and it's definitely going to be a real highlight. And then, as you say, like roll into the reviews and other people's reactions and getting to share that. I think that's going to be really, really cool. So I'm very excited for that to happen.
Fantastic. Oh, look, we've got just over a minute left, so I'm happy to, you guys have been fantastic. We've covered everything from design all the way to printing, all the way, and we even touched on the review phase, which is very exciting. We've got a minute left. I'm going to throw it open to you guys. Anything you guys want to say, upcoming, the floor is yours for the next minute.
Guys, what do you got coming up? Do you want to speak on anything? Any other comments? I
think you should finish off, Mark, being the creator of this great.
I think I've spoken enough. I don't know. Simon, you got anything coming up? Alexis, Tim, I know you're all working on something.
Yeah, I got a few things on the go, but biggest one is a series with Image coming out next year sometime. It's probably going to be announced sometime. I'm not allowed to say, but it's all pretty much there, so that's exciting. And also
very cloak and dagger, mate.
Yeah, well, you have to be. But the most important thing is I'm colouring issue 2 of Doorman right now, so that should be done in the next couple of weeks, and then we're on to number 3.
Great diplomatic answer there, Simon. Love it. Yeah, I can tell you've been around the traps for a while, mate. and Alexis and Tim, what do you have in the works now? Mark's got me intrigued.
Oh, well, I've just come out of a writer's room for a series with Asia's Next Top Model winners for a zombie apocalypse photography shoot, where what would the last 90 seconds of your life be? And wasn't my idea. I would be directing it, but it is impossible to get over right there right now with coronavirus. I've got a couple of big pitches coming up for TV series, and I've got a documentary that it's been on hold because of COVID that I'm working on. And yeah, I'm just editing for some friends as well. But I've just got volume 3 from Mark, the new draft, and I've read it. It's looking really good. And Tim had a really wonderful hand in that as well.
Fantastic. Oh, look, if we're at the hour mark, and look, thank you all so much for jumping on. Last chance to say something before we wrap up?
I do.
Oh, there you go. We've got to take it.
I feel like because I am mostly involved with the story at the tail end, the people that I talk to the most are the backers. So I think at this point, I would just like to say, actually vocalize thanks, because I think, you know, every day we get more and more people who kind of get interested in the journey, and we don't forget the people who kind of backed us on Kickstarter. So I think it's just a nice time to kind of, now that we're all together, just say thank you to everybody, because that's kind of why we're all in the room, right? So yeah.
Yep.
No, I'll say that. I mean, the people that jumped on board, even the comic community, they've been amazing. I did not know these people existed, but now I know a few of them now. But yeah, the support in the back has been extremely gracious and supportive, and can't wait to get this thing in their hands.
Fantastic. Look, thank you all so much for coming on. And hopefully when the next project comes on, Mark, you reach out to us, and we're happy
Absolutely.
to talk about your next project when it comes on.
No worries, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Great seeing you.